This week, we have a very exciting show planned for you. We have a double feature interview. So there'll be 2 interviews on the show. The first interview will be with Ernesto Perez-Carrillo of Carillo Cigars. Very excited. As many of our listeners know, I'm a huge fan. So this is a monumental moment in the Stogie Geeks show, which is great. Enrique Sanchez will be our second guest. He'll make a triumphant return to the Stogie Geeks show. He is from Global Premium Cigars. He's got some announcements for us. So stay tuned for all that and more on this week's edition of the Stogie Geeks. This is a Security Weekly production. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where cigars burn slow, ashes fall fast, and cocktails flow steady. It's the Stogie Geek Show. Welcome, everyone, to the Stogie Geek Show. Joe and I are already silly.
Oh, yeah.
Joe Hozempa, a.k.a. Joe Hollywood, is here with me in studio.
I'm fired up.
Havana Cigar Club, located in Warwick, Rhode Island, is a great place to enjoy a drink and a cigar. Stogie Geeks listeners can find a $5 off coupon on our website by clicking the HCC logo. Welcome back, everyone, to the Stogie Geek Show. I'm, of course, your host, Paul Asadorian, joined here in studio by Joe Hollywood.
How are
Joe
you?
Hozempa, how are you?
I'm good. I'm excited.
You're rocking the jacket today. I feel underdressed now.
That's okay. It's good.
It wasn't for the show, though.
No,
You
no.
were adorning the jacket.
Yeah. In next episode, I promised I would wear a suit jacket and jeans too. We have the next episode is gonna be another fantastic interview lined up, so I'm excited.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, this is going to be an exciting show. As I said, we've got double interviews, and we're smoking a cigar that was made by our first guest, someone that I've tracked in the industry for quite some time. Of course, when in 2009, actually, tell a quick story, when I was really getting into cigars. Were we doing the show at that time? I'm not sure. It was around the time we were starting the show. And I had the 2009 inaugural from Carillo, and it was just an awesome experience. There was a buzz about it in the store, and I've been basically a huge fan of Ernesto Cigars, as he said, his own company since then, and even before that, his previous endeavors. So, Ernesto, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's truly a pleasure to be on your show and, talk to you guys and, have some fun.
Absolutely. It's interesting, Ernesto, people outside the industry will oftentimes ask me, like, of all the cigars you have, like, who's your favorite? And I'm like, well, Ernesto Cigars. And they're like, who's that? And I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know who Ernesto is? And I'm like, you've probably smoked his cigar. So, Ernesto, if you want to just talk about kind of a little bit of background and your history in the cigar industry and kind of how we got here today.
Well, I think what really people know me for is the Gloria Cubana in the Cigar series of La Gloria Cubana. So, even now that, I have my own line since 2009, people still say to me, hey, Ernesto, I'll be at an event. And they always say to me, hey, Ernesto, man, I love you, Cigar. It's like my favorite cigar. And, you listen to them. But at some point, you got to say, well, yeah, but I'm not with them anymore. We have our own company, Carillo, and we make, this cigar and that cigar. So, I mean, there's still that perception that I am, still with that brand. And though we are making a cigar for them, the Reserva, the Colección Reserva, there's still a perception that I am part of that group also. But, that brand has been with us since 1970. So it's always, it's always a part of my heart, But that's basically why people know me, because of that brand. And now with the inch like Stogie and all the other cigars, people are starting now to see me with my new, company and my new brands.
Yeah, even though that's almost been, 10 years now in the making. What was it like, and what was the decision like to leave La Gloria Cubana and go off and do your own thing? I know many of us in many different business ventures, myself included, kind of left the organization they worked for a long time and started their own thing. What was that like for you?
Well, needless to say, it was a decision that I made because I wanted to kind of do things a little bit different way. I wanted to experiment with different tobaccos And you got to understand, La Gloria Cubana, Cigar, and some of the cigars we made in that factory were in such high demand that it was really hard for me to come out and try to do something differently. So that's when I decided to, go out on my own. And, when my kids, Lisette and Ernie, decided to join me. And that was really one of the reasons, we had a great relationship. I enjoy working for that company. But, I just felt that I needed to go out on my own. And I guess to a certain degree, prove myself again that I could do what I did with La Gloria, but, with different types of, tobaccos and different blends that I had always wanted to do. So that was one of the, yeah, go ahead.
What was it like when your children said they wanted to be involved in the business? Did they sit you down like together or separately and like kind of break the news like, hey, I want to be in the cigar business with you, Dad?
Well, one thing about my kids, and when they have something planned, they both come at me. If it's something that, kind of is not really that big of an issue, they'll come separately. But in this particular case, they came at me, from both sides. And the thing, the first thing I told them was, look, the cigar business is not the type of business you guys are. My daughter, Lisette's a lawyer, and my son was in finance in KKR. So I say, you're not going to be making the big bucks, and this is really a very hard work, which doesn't mean they weren't working hard before, but it's a different type of hard work, And, in spite of that, they both quit their jobs and they decided to start the company with me. So that's really, that for me was really a very important time in my life as far as, having my kids work with me. Because, at the back of your mind, you always want your kids to join the business. And that was not, I have to say, that was not the original idea. The original idea was for me to make, private labels. I had a few, companies that wanted me to make, cigars for them. So that was the original idea when I decided to, to go on my own. But, my kids, they kind of talked me into doing it the way they wanted to do it. And I'm glad it turned out this way.
Yeah, me too. Now, so how did your wife feel when you had to break the news that all three of you were like leaving your day jobs to go pursue this new venture?
Well, one thing about my wife, she's always been, supportive of me in anything I do. And I have to be, I'm blessed to have her as a wife because, she understands that although I love her, my family, cigars and tobacco is just part of my life also. So, she was very understanding and, she was in full support of it. So, it turned out, after 47 years of marriage, she kind of knows me better than I know myself. So it turned out great. There was no issues with that.
So you started blending the first cigar, the inaugural, in 2009. It's a very much a lighter or medium-bodied cigar. What went into that decision? Even at the time, I think, almost 10 years ago, there were a lot stronger cigars on the market, and I thought it was kind of innovative to come out with a cigar that was a much lighter profile. So what went into that, blending process?
Well, the whole thing was, when I came out with a new cigar, people were kind of expecting me to come out with another Cigar or Gloria Cubana or Rico Habano. And I think, for me to do that, to have done that, I just didn't feel right. I didn't think it was the right thing to do, taking into account, the way that, General Cigar and myself, got along. So I said to myself, there's another side of Ernesto. There's another side of blending that maybe people don't know about. And, that's basically what I came out with, this, completely different cigar that I had ever made before. Because, if you go back, really the only cigar that I made that was kind of similar to that was a trunk show cigar that we made with a Connecticut wrapper. And again, I didn't want to, do the same thing I was doing. First of all, out of respect for General Cigar. And secondly, because, I wanted people to see another side of Ernesto that perhaps they didn't know, they didn't know about. And I'll be frank with you, that's from the beginning, that's been one of my, favorite blends and everything that I make because it's a very unique smoke. It has, very unique tobaccos that, aren't around anymore. So.
And what is the blend of that cigar?
That cigar has the special thing that makes that cigar is the wrapper. And the wrapper was basically, well, there's a couple of special things. You know, that was a predominantly Nicaraguan blend, but there was two very special things that made that cigar. You know, one, the wrapper was an experimental seed that a friend of mine, David Perez from ASP, was growing, and it was a seed called, I'll never forget, it was a seed 154, which they never grew again, and that was a hybrid of different Connecticut's and Habano that he was experimenting with. And I remember there was only like 30 bales of those, which was perfect, And then the other thing, some of the tobacco in there, like the binder, was a 5-year-old binder that I got from another friend of mine, the Oliva Cigar Company, which also was very unique about that particular blend. So you had tobacco that was unique in the binder because of the aging, and also the wrapper, which is like I said, a very special wrapper that is probably never going to be grown again. But the predominantly the blend was predominantly all Nicaragua.
And was that a decision made early on as the trend? We've seen a lot of in the industry where you have a shortage, not a shortage, but only so many materials to work with. And you release a cigar, and it's one and done. And certainly your short run series in the name kind of conveys the message that, like, I had this much tobacco, this is what you get, and that's it. Is that something you planned from the beginning and are going to continue in the future as well?
Yeah, because when I got into the business, we got in like a year, it was 2009, and we came out with this, toward the end of 2009. So, I mean, we were getting ready for the regular, short runs and core lines and that type of stuff. But, when you're working with tobaccos, when you're working with wrappers, when you're working with, binders and fillers, they have, although you may think that, okay, I'm going to buy this tobacco and it's going to be ready or whatever, sometimes it doesn't work that way. So when we came out with the inaugural, we were really planning to do our next offering would be probably in January, February, I'm sorry. So we came out first with the 2010 short run, which was also a unique tobacco that we had. And then we came out with a regular core line. I think that was in the second quarter. In other words, we really weren't, and I'll be frank with you, I wasn't really even ready to go to the show. The show was kind of like a month before we decided to go to the show. We were going to do kind of a soft introduction, start with the inaugural, and then come out with a short run. But we kind of moved things ahead, around the show time, around the time of the IPCPR. And
the cigar we're smoking today is actually a short run from 2013. And who better to tell us about the blend?
That one, I believe, and you have to forgive me because, we've done so many of these, but that one I believe was a Habano wrapper, if I'm not mistaken. Because I know that 2012 was a Ecuadorian Connecticut wrapper. That one I believe was a Habano wrapper. And that was an old Nicaraguan filler binder with the Ecuadorian Habano wrapper.
We're smoking the Corona Gorda size, and these are like, I have to guard them with my life in my humidor. people are always going in there grabbing. There wasn't that many left in the box, so it's fantastic. They're smoking fantastic.
Well, the funny thing is that I'm finding is that a lot of people now, they're looking for these short runs since they're not around anymore. They're looking for some limitadas. For instance, the inaugural. One that's very popular is the Dark Ritual 2011.
Yes.
They're starting to look for these cigars now because they're not available. And, they'll probably, will never be made again. Those blends.
Yeah, and the Dark Ritual, that was somewhat of a departure. It was a very different blend, very different look and feel completely. What went into the, the process to come up with the Dark Ritual?
Right, that was, and again, when I work on a blend, and it's incredible because the length and the ring gauge is really going to be the determining factor in what you use. In other words, what that cigar is going to taste like, and of course the binder and wrapper. But the length and the ring gauge, because of the amount of tobacco you're going to use in each of the different sizes, it's really going to change the smoke of the cigar. So that one we found that with I think I was a 56 by 6.5, And that really worked, tremendously well with that particular blend that I made.
Yeah.
Because we tried to make that blend. I think it was like a 52, and it just wasn't, it wasn't delivering what I wanted to deliver. You needed that extra ring gauge and that extra, half inch, I think it was, to really get the, the blend that I was looking for.
The perception from much of the Stogie Geeks audience and cigar nerds in general is not very positive when they're looking at larger ring gauge cigars, 58 ring gauge plus. What I've found, Ernesto, with your cigars is you're able to blend something really spectacular in a larger ring gauge. When I smoke the 60 rings, I tend to go towards the inch, and in your line of cigars, I mean, you're not going to give away your special sauce, right? But what goes into the blending, and what are some of the challenges in blending a larger ring gauge?
Well, the challenging, first of all, although you can put more tobacco in it, you have to be careful as far as, putting too much. There has to be a balance. And, with a bigger ring gauge cigar, you get that opportunity to put, more different types of tobacco. In other words, for the inch, we use basically four types of tobaccos. We use 3 Dominicans and 1 Nicaragua. So you get that, you're able to blend with more tobaccos. You're able also, to put, let's say you want to use 2 ligeros instead of 1, which is usually the case with a Robusto, or 1.5, for a Toro, something to that effect. So you can use more tobaccos, experiment more with, more body, I guess you could say, more flavors. There's more, you can put like half a leaf, and it's really going to make a difference as far as the blend is concerned. So, I mean, I excuse me 1 second.
Sure. Beeping.
Sorry about that. I thought I'd turn this off.
No worries.
So, I mean, it's very interesting because, when you start blending with big ring gauge cigars, people think, well, you just throw tobacco in there. It's, no, it doesn't work that way. Just when you're blending like a Lancero, that also has a certain amount of tobaccos that you can put in, and you have to be sure that they're the right ones, because otherwise, it's not going to come out that way you want to.
Now, you don't have a Lancero on the market today, to my knowledge.
No, we've made one for crown heads, the drumsticks, and that came out about 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think I've had that. So
far, it's been the only one that, under our brand, no, we don't have one yet.
So where did you come up with the concept of New Wave, which was your first Connecticut release, regular production Connecticut release? And, I think the name kind of is significant there. So if you could, explain that as well.
Yeah, the New Wave Connecticut, the way we came, the concept there was to have a Connecticut that was not necessarily your mild Connecticut, but something that had a little bit more of, mild to medium, and had more of a creaminess that I was looking for. And, I smoked a lot before I came out with that particular cigar, I smoked a lot of Connecticut's that were out there. And one thing that I saw was that, and a lot of the cases, they needed, some of that creaminess smoke that I enjoy. So I didn't want to make a Connecticut. I never want to make a cigar that's like anything else that's out there, as far as the taste profile, strength, or flavors. So when I made this one, I kept looking for something that was going to be, more on the sweeter or creamier side. And this is how, when I came out with the name New Wave Connecticut, it was basically to say, this is the way that I feel a Connecticut, for my taste, should be like.
Yeah, and it's a tricky process. And like yourself, Ernesto, I've smoked a lot of Connecticut cigars. I like smoking Connecticut cigars. I think that's somewhat in contrast to many of those in the industry. I enjoy all cigars, but I tend to gravitate towards them. And I find they fall into like 3 different categories, right? There's the ones that are too light, like there's just not enough meat to sink your teeth into. There's the ones that go the other end of the spectrum, and the filler and the binder are very strong and in too much sharp contrast to that wrapper. And then there's the ones like yours that fall somewhere in between, and those are the ones I gravitate towards. So what are some of the experiments you've had and reasons why some of those other Connecticut's or experiments might not work given those three profiles?
Well, I think I understand perfectly what you're talking about. I think that sometimes when you're blending Connecticut's, I think one of the very important aspects of blending a Connecticut is knowing, needless to say, the tobaccos that you're going to use as far as the strength level, and also the binder. Now we for this particular cigar that we make, we use a Nicaraguan binder that's a seco, okay, and it's a very it has a lot of the I would say sweetness, creaminess of what I'm looking for, and the fillers that we use also, we use basically visos and secos. We don't use any ligeros with those, because people that smoke in Connecticut, they don't want an overpowerful cigar, and I think nowadays you're looking more for something that has more flavors, a little bit of strength, but mostly flavors and that creaminess that we all enjoy so much. At least I do. And when I made this Connecticut, like I said, I tried different types of Connecticut's, and not that they're bad. I'm not want to sound like I criticize anybody or anything like that, but they were not to my liking. And what I find that, when I make a blend, I have to be in love with it, because if I'm not in love with it, I just know it's not, what my fans are looking for as far as, my signature smokes, I guess you could say, or signature blends, if you want to call them that.
And Ernesto, what's the difference between the New Wave and the New Wave Reserva?
Okay, the New Wave Reserva, we use a wrapper that's a higher priming. We use a 5th and 6th priming wrapper. And also, that's a blend also that has Dominican tobacco. We use a Piloto Cubano, the original C Piloto Cubano. And we use a broadleaf binder. And the blend, like I said, the filler blend is Dominican in Nicaragua with a broadleaf binder, and the higher priming of the Connecticut, and that completely, needless to say, is a whole different blend. It doesn't have maybe some of the creaminess, but it has, I feel, a little bit more complexity. It rounds out the smoke also in a very unique way. So I mean, they're both Connecticut's, one being a lower priming, one being a higher priming wrapper. That's going to make a difference, but also the blend itself is, completely different from one or the other, and you're gonna taste that when you smoke it.
Yeah, it's probably one of my in my top lists of cigars I've smoked in my lifetime that I've smoked the most of is that New Wave Reserva Toro. To me, in that size and that blend, it's just one of my go-to cigars, if not the go-to cigar in my humidor. And largely because of not just the flavors, of course, but the versatility as well. You don't have to necessarily, in my opinion, smoke it in the morning or the afternoon or night. It's a good cigar no matter the time of day, and that cigar just knocks it out of the park for me.
I agree, and it's funny because we get in Europe we get a lot of requests for that particular cigar. Especially the Robusto and the Toro and the Bellicoso.
And Joe, sorry, I'm hogging the stage here.
I have a lot of questions. How are you, sir?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. I'm a big fan of the short run 2015, 2013. So you elaborated on that. I'm also a big fan of the dusk. Is that meant to smoke at night? Because I really enjoy it in the morning. So is there something wrong with me?
Well, let me tell you, the dusk is a very, very interesting smoke, and I'll explain to you why. The dusk is predominantly a Nicaraguan fillers from Esteli, and I made that cigar using a lot of ASP tobacco because going back to the 1990s, that's the first Nicaraguan tobacco that I used, and I've been using ever since. So when I made that cigar, I wanted to really, put a lot of tobacco in there in honor of Silvio Perez, which was, the grandfather of David Perez, who is now the owner of those farms. So that tobacco, that particular cigar, that cigar needs to really be, how do you say, when you get a box, when you buy a box, or when you get it, that really needs to be aged a little bit more. Why? Because of the tobaccos that we use in there, the Esteli tobaccos that we use that are predominantly their tobacco is a very thick tobacco that needs a certain humidity level for you to get really that whole concept of the smoke that I'm looking for. And ideally, it's it's good to keep it at around 62 to 65 relative humidity. What happens is a lot of people, they buy that cigar, and it's happened, where customers tell me, and they'll get it right off the shelf, they'll smoke it. Maybe there's a little bit too much humidity there. But once they let that cigar rest and they retry it, they'll come back and say, Ernesto, it's a different cigar. It's really a fuller body. It has a lot of flavor. It has a lot of, the peppery, the spice that when I first got it right off the shelf, I really couldn't find that. So this is what I would do with that particular cigar. If you get that cigar, set it somewhere where, you can keep it 2 or 3 days and then give it a shot. Because I think you're going to find that it's a very flavorful, complex. And again, the peppery and the spices are going to be more predominant when they're at the right humidity.
Awesome. Yeah, I really enjoy that cigar, especially towards the end. It's just so tasty. That and any of the short runs are usually my go-tos for sure for that. When I have a question in regards to your kids, when they said that they wanted to be part of the business, what advice did you give them? And for that matter, what advice would you give someone who's in your position? What did you say to them in regards to the industry and what it's like?
I think, I had selfish reasons for them to be in the business. I wasn't going to be. But basically, the only thing I told them, listen, look, this is not a business where you're going to make, the money you're making now. And they were making, pretty good money. They never told me how much they were making, but I can imagine. So, but in the back of my mind, I say, yeah, you guys, quit the business, come work with your father and all that. And I think that, what I would recommend, for anybody that has a company and wants their children to come into the company. I mean, unless the kid is really has grown up in the business and has been at the factory, 24/7, like, was a case, it has been a case in a lot of, the companies that are around now. The first thing I would say is, go out and study, finish your schooling. This is not going anywhere. This business is going to be around forever. But it's very important that, that they understand that they have to finish their schooling. They have to have some type of profession because, this business is not really for everybody. It may seem like there's a lot of glamour and a lot of fun and all that, but believe me, there's a lot of hard work. And there's a lot of things that go into, running this business aside from buying tobacco and making blends. So I would recommend that, don't just say, I want to go into the business and right away as a father, accept it. I would say, study, finish your schooling, and then if you want to come into the business, come in. Hey, like I said, it's not all fun and fun and games. It's a lot of hard work, and a lot of people aren't cut to do this type of thing.
Right.
So it's something that you really have to think about for the future of your kids.
Right. Now you've been around for a while, so how do you envision the business over the next 5 to 10 years? How do you picture it changing? Because I'm pretty sure that you've seen a lot of changes within the industry. So how do you think it's all going to go down in about 5 or 10 years? You think it's going to be different?
I think that, yeah, you're right. I've seen a lot of change. I've been in the business since 1870 in one way or the other. And I've always been, around, tobacco since the 1980s, really, when my father passed away and I took over the business. But, this business, it is funny because I remember just before Cigar Aficionado came out, this business was in the dooms, and we would go to the RTDAs at that time, and everybody's face was, you can imagine, because there was really no business. So you have to have that that faith and that belief that things will come around. And I never forget. I remember one time back in those days, back in the '82s. I think that's when I started going to the RTDA. I remember, me being the young kid in the block. There was the Fuentes, there was the Villasones, Frank Janes, Danny Blumenthal, Arturo Fuentes, Ramon Cifuentes. I mean, those were the people at that time, and even then were having issues. And I remember I was talking to Fuentes one time, and I was down because realistically there was nothing happening, at least in my part, at least with my brand. And he said, Ernesto, you know what? I've been in this business for years, and you have to remember this is a 7-year cycle. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? He says, well, you're going to have 7 years of things just, going beautifully. And then you're going to have 7 years of where, you may be struggling. But you have to keep that faith. And you have to be prepared to wait for that other 7 years. And, that's something that I've always kept in the back of my mind, no matter how, difficult or bad things may look. Like, this thing with the FDA. This business is so strong. The people in this business are so strong that we're gonna be around for a while. So the next 5 or 10 years, I'm very optimistic about. I see a lot of younger people coming into the business, a lot of more younger people smoking, a lot more women smoking. So I think we have an excellent future in this industry.
I had a couple more specific cigar questions.
Yes.
A lot of us in the industry, hobbyists and those in media alike, have done our fair share of chasing rare cigars. And of those rare cigars or limited cigars, there are some that really stand out to me from a number of different manufacturers. EP Carillo being one of them. And that limited 2010, that was just a super special cigar. It was super limited in my experience of limited cigars. It was pretty hard to find, and good luck finding one today. What was so special about that cigar?
About the limited 2010?
2010, yeah.
The limited or the short run?
The limited.
The limited, okay. Let me go back, because that's a few years ago. But I believe that's, if I'm not mistaken, it was. And you have to forgive me because we've made so many blends. As a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago, I was sitting with Junior, who is the production manager here, and he said, Ernesto, you know how many blends? Because I asked him to make like 8 blends for me now, and he says, Ernesto, during the 9 years that we've been here, you've made over what was it, something like 360 blends or something like that. So you have to forgive me if I don't remember exactly what that one was. But, every time, whether it's, that particular blend or whatever, when I make a limitada, I try to do it with tobaccos that, I don't necessarily carry in my inventory. Tobaccos that I may use in a future time, but there's not enough of, or there's something that I feel, is going to work for that particular cigar, but not necessarily to go into a full production cigar. So I mean, I have to, you have to forgive me, but I can't if remember exactly what that particular blend was at that time.
And speaking of the number of blends, I'm not sure if that's higher than some folks who are blending their own cigars, but I've been told by inside sources that you've got so many test blends that's what led to Ernesto's Humidor. Some of those were your own test blends that you released in the market. So what went into the release of Ernesto's Humidor?
Well, I'll tell you what that was about. For instance, the Connecticut one, that was based basically when I was making the different blends for the New Wave Connecticut. I was using different wrappers, okay, and not different wrappers. I'm sorry, different binders, and that was one of the ones that I kind of liked, but I said to myself, I really I'm not going to get. I'm really not going to get into buying too much of this tobacco. So I'll leave it aside because of the fact that I did have that you said that access to that particular tobacco. And this was a binder that we used that was from Nicaragua. It was a part of Nicaragua called Somoto. So it was something that I really don't use that much of. But that was what had that particular cigar had that particular binder. And as it turned out, when we were going to make those cigars, that particular humidor, I tried. And I said, God, what is this, man? And I mean, I fell in love with that particular blend. That's why we put in the humidor. And then the Colorado, we came out with the 5th year, on our 5th anniversary. And again, this was one of the blends that I was working on that at that time didn't make the grade for the Colorado, but for this particular, limitada, I thought was going to be the perfect one. Again, because we were using tobaccos there that I really wasn't going to use for regular productions. And as with the Maduro was one that was based basically on the 2010 blend of the core Maduro. What I did there in the core Maduro, we used an Ecuadorian Sumatra wrapper. For this particular one, I went with a different type of wrapper binder, not wrapper, binder. We use a broadleaf wrapper, different binder. And we went also with a Sumatra wrapper, but from a different, part than we usually buy from.
Mm. And I like the Sumatra wrapper very much so on the original Cardinal. Now, that blend's changed a lot over time. Can you kind of give us a little journey about what happened with the Cardinal?
Right. What happened with the Cardinal, that was a brand that we came out. That was, I think, like our 3rd or 4th brand that we came out in the regular core lines. Mm-hmm. And I have to be frank with you, I love that cigar. I love that blend. And but it just wasn't doing what I was hoping it would do for whatever reason. And I remember one time we had some cigars there because when we made the whole new rebranding of other brands, that was one of the brands that really was kind of debating, do we keep this, do we not keep this, just like the Core Plus. And I said, you know what, I have a lot of faith in that cigar. And we made some samples, with them, pressed. And, it turned out to be completely different smoke as far as, what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting it to be what it came out because of the fact that we pressed it. And, I enjoyed it a lot. I like that blend a lot. I like the Maduro a lot also. And I said, if we're going to come out with this cigar again, let's give it something else to make people look at this cigar again. And it's it's worked out, because you know how it is. You come out with a blend, and if people aren't really picking up on it or they're not understanding it, no matter how much you try to push it, no matter how much you try to change the packaging or whatever, it's just hard to get into people's a rotation again. And with this one, the fact that we pressed it, the fact that it gave it a whole different, taste profile, feel to the smoke, it really turned out to be a great move.
And now, you mentioned the packaging changes. What went into the decision to, you basically changed your packaging across the board, correct?
Yes. Well, we had to do that because, when the original FDA ruling came out, you had to August 2016 to really make any changes. At that time, we didn't know that, they would change that. And I've always wanted to, do a packaging that would be more into, I guess you could say my age group. I'm not a young, a young person. I'm going to be 67 this year. And I felt to a certain degree that the packaging that we have, was not really, I loved it. Don't get me wrong, I loved it, but it was not really catching on to the people in my age group. or the 30, 40, 50-year-old age group. And this is why we decided to make that change, to have the packaging to a certain degree identify a little bit more with my persona, and it was the opportunity that we had to do it, and that's why we did it, and it was all done basically within 5 or 6 months. So we had to get all the design work done. We had to do all the printing done before that show, which I believe was in July.
Yeah, and the new packaging is a lot more ornate, I'll say. I didn't mind the old packaging. I like smoking the cigars, so it really didn't matter to me. With the, but obviously in the market that makes a difference for sales, right?
But the thing is, and again, like I said before, I love the packaging, the old packaging. But I'm the type of person I like. How can I explain this? I like more of the the older, like the Spanish villas, the Italian, palacios and that type of thing. And I think that's why, that was the type of packaging I was, kind of looking for. And, something that I enjoy looking at, that I enjoy, because I've been to a lot of, different places in Europe, and you see this, beautiful, how do you say, drapery, and you see this beautiful art, and you see all these beautiful, and I just say, this is what I want to do. And it seems to have, worked.
Yeah, and the La Historia line is certainly some of the most beautiful packaging, coupled with a really great cigar to go with it. So how did you and your team come up with the La Historia idea in blend?
Well, that was, I have to be frank, that wasn't me. That was, that basically was Ernie's and Lisette's idea. When, when we were looking, and of course this was back in 2012, I believe it was, when they started looking at that. I remember Ernie got some, samples of order labels that our printer in Holland sent us. And he started looking at it. He started coming up with concepts. And basically he got to the point, he says, I mean, it looks beautiful, but I really, I need help in this somehow to see how we can make this work. And that's when Lisette got involved. And Lisette was really, the one that really got into the aspect of, finishing up the design with a local designer in Miami. So, they came up, they worked on it for a long time. And to be frank, I didn't see it basically till it was printed, I mean, they wouldn't show me what the final product was going to look like. And when I saw it, the colors and everything, I said, man, this is special. And again, that caused, for me to really, look into the blend a lot closer and really want to make something real special. Because, my mother's face is in there, Lisette's face is in there. And it's kind of a, family type of thing where, the history of the family. And it was, it was a very, how do you say, it was a very integral design, but not only the design, the cigar also, it had to be special for this, particular packaging.
Joe, more questions for Ernesto?
No, I'm enjoying the 2013.
Yeah, I know. I'm kind of distracted by it.
Right. I'm just sitting back here saying, man, this cigar's so tasty.
I'm just thinking the same thing.
Right. It's just so tasty. That's why you don't have that many left in your cigar.
Oh, you're one of the culprits.
They were a lot of my, this 2013 was a go-to when I was hosting for quite a few weeks in a row.
That's awesome. So, Ernesto, what are some of I guess first, some of the newer blends that have come out most recently? We talked a little bit about the Dusk, but there are some other newer blends that we probably haven't covered as much as obviously some of the older ones here on the show. So for our audience, tell us about some of the newer blends that are available today.
Well, right now, the newest blend that we have is the Elencos. And the Elencos was a cigar we came out, and we came out with that as a limited. I believe that was I want to say 2012, 2000, I think it was 2012, when we got number 8 cigar and Cigar Aficionado and number 8 cigar of the year. And that was basically a, all Nicaraguan blend with a Brazilian wrapper. So we came out with that. We got the high ratings. About a year later, we came out with the, with a line with three sizes. And we had that for about a year to 2 years. And then we ran into a little bit of issues with, supplying the wrapper. In other words, we couldn't get the Brazilian wrapper that we used for that particular cigar. So about 2 years ago, we started to be able to get some more of this Brazilian wrapper, and that's when we decided to relaunch it last year, and that's basically one of our newer lines that we've come out with recently. We also have the Encore, which is shipping March 15th, and that's something that we're all very excited about. That's part of the Perez-Carrillo line. And that's an all Nicaraguan puro, filler, wrapper, and binder. And, we're very excited about that. So that's what's going to be coming out now this month. And then we have a couple of things planned, for about May, June, which we'll be coming out with. And then, of course, for the ICPCR, we have 2 projects, one limitada and something else that I think people are really going to enjoy.
That's awesome.
I've had the Oscura too.
The Oscura?
Yeah, it's very, very good. Very tasty. I still like the Dusk though.
Yeah.
I'm just a fan of the Dusk from that series for sure. Like I said, I like it in the morning. I don't know why. That with coffee, it's just such a great pairing.
Well, and I was talking to someone that said they like to smoke heavier cigars in the morning, who fairly recently has joined the team, and that's Jose Blanco. And if you want to talk a little bit about the history of how you both know each other and then came to work together again.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jose, we've known each other over 20 years, and Jose, the good thing, the great thing about Jose, besides being a great lover of cigars, a great lover of the industry. I mean, he's been around, who knows, over 50 years, I would say. We see eye to eye on a lot of things. We're basically almost the same age. So we understand, we've lived through the whole industry. We understand, what this industry was like before, what it is now, and what we need to do to really protect what we have and make it grow. So, I mean, he's been a great asset to us. And it's funny because, when I come out with a blend or something, I'm gone to the point where, I mean, that guy has a great palate, and it's very nice to be able to depend on somebody that when you're making a blend, can give you that, yeah, it's a goal, it's not a goal. And it's happened a couple of times where I wanted to come out with something. He told me, look, Ernesto, this is not happening. And, it's just kind of convinced me, yes, I know it's not happening, but I wanted to hear your opinion because I really value his opinion a lot. So at this point, he's been a great help to me, not only in the, the sales part of the business, but also in the, in a lot of the blendings. And again, he's, I call him my grandfather. He is.
Oh, that's funny. So in terms of new blends coming out, obviously you'll be at IPCPR.
Yes.
Has that process changed, or is it still the same? And you've got some new blends you'll be announcing.
Well, this year, we have, like I said, we have these 2 blends that we spoke about earlier. We have something coming up in June, and then we're going to have the Limitada and something else in the ICPCR. And, there's something also, a concept I'm working on. There's a couple of concepts I'm working on, which, it's a little bit too early. Mm-hmm. But I think there's going to be, they're very interesting as far as the concept of the cigar itself, and that's something I still have, to work on a little bit. But but I'm hopefully, we'll be able to also, offer that at the IPCPR or maybe later on in November.
Awesome. Fantastic.
And we're also going to be making a cigar for the TAA, and that's going to be available in June. And that's also a very nice, fuller type of smoke for that particular cigar.
Is that your first TAA release?
Well, it's as a company, yes. As a company, yes. We've made, I believe, over the last, 4 or 5 years, we've made them for crown heads. But this will be the first one under the EP Carillo company.
Fantastic. Well, yeah. I could sit here and talk all day, Ernesto, but I know you got things you have to attend to as well. I wanted to thank you very much for appearing on the Stogie Geeks show and sharing your knowledge and experience with our audience and with us. It's been fantastic. I'm so happy to have you on the show. Like I said, I'm a big fan, and I smoke a lot of your cigars. No offense to anyone else, obviously. I like to smoke everyone's cigars.
Listen, one thing. Let me tell you something about this industry. And I say this from the heart. We may all be, competitors, but at the end of the day, this is a small industry, and some people may think this is humongous industry, but it's a small business. And I can assure you that all of us, at least this is the way I feel, in the business want to see each other do good. And if you like my cigars or you like somebody else's cigars, I think we all, understand that everybody has, different palates. And believe me, nowadays there's a lot of good cigars out there. So there's room for everybody. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. That's awesome. Ernesto, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much. And hopefully I look forward to doing this again someday.
Absolutely. You're welcome back anytime. Hope to see you at an event soon. And with that, we'll take a short break, come back, bring back our next interview. So stay tuned.